For Real News is sponsored by assholes like you, so pay up, motherfucker. The For Real News is back, and this is Ramon, your host, bold like a leopard, and we're going to continue on the topic of last week, where we're covering Telesur's allegations that the U.S. interstate cross-check system for election registration is suppressing the vote. Now, what they failed to mention last time, if you remember, was the registration of 800,000 illegal immigrants in California for driver's licenses, which is, by the way, the same place where you enter the motor voter program. And there was an objection that at the voting booth you should not be checked for citizenship, as if the very implication that a non-citizen should be suspected of voting is really a problem. There was also a denial on the part of Greg Palast, the reporter from the, I believe he works for Telesur in some capacity, he believed that there are no crimes that have been committed related to voter fraud and registration fraud. As I demonstrated, there have been several implicated people, among them in Indiana, Texas, and in Virginia. I believe also in Connecticut there has been a politician, a state senator, who was convicted last year of multiple voter fraud offenses. So to say that it's rare could be forgiven, but to say that it's almost never prosecuted or that there are no cases that have been ended in conviction is simply incorrect and at the best out of date. So let's continue on this theme. We're going to start again with that report at the end and then move towards Telesur and the Real News and their coverage of a similar issue in a different country. So follow along as we talk about how the left views voter integrity depending on where you are.
Minorities in America, when you get a driver's license, you get a voter form attached. He would remove that. He wants people to prove, Kobach and now Trump want people to prove that they're citizens to vote. And I say, well, why not? Prove you're a citizen to vote. Excuse me? How do you prove you're a citizen in America? This is not Red China. We don't carry citizenship cards.
Now remember, in the other segment, as already mentioned, I demonstrated that in several states, I think in California for sure, I already just demonstrated with the San Jose Mercury News story, where there are 800,000 people in California that are issued driver's licenses. So therefore, should people who are going to pick up driver's licenses who are not citizens, should they be registered to vote? There already was a case, and I'll bring it up. This from NBC News. It says, grandmother deported for voter fraud leaves U.S. in tears. As she held her 2-week-old son, Margarita Fitzpatrick, prepared for a family dinner she'd never forget. Then she cried. Leaving them behind is heartbreaking, she said. There are no words to describe it. The dinner at her daughter's home would be her last in the country she loved. And then it says, now let's get beyond the fluff. It says, without much evidence, Donald Trump has often referred to millions of people voting illegally in this country. Fitzpatrick now admits she did cast 2 ballots improperly, but she insists it was not intentional. Her story then is one that stretches across 3 presidential administrations, those of Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. It's a story that sheds light on potential gaps in federal law, the limits of the judicial system, and the agonizing consequences of what one woman calls a horrible mistake. It says she left Peru in 2001, legally came to the U.S. to seek a better life with her 3 daughters. She decided to study English and earn a certificate as a medical translator. Eventually, she married and got a green card as she pursued a career in nursing. Her 3 daughters, born in Peru, became naturalized U.S. citizens. She applied for an Illinois driver's license in 2005, presenting her Peruvian passport and her green card. On one form, she declined to register to vote, but she said a clerk asked her if she wanted to register to vote. When she asked the clerk if she was supposed to, she said the clerk responded, "It's up to you." Non-citizens should not be asked this question, period, Fitzpatrick said. On another form, she checked the yes box next to the question, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" She said she thought that was the closest thing to her status, legal permanent residence. So she actually did lie on this form, technically. Then she voted in 2 elections. She claimed she only voted for a local school superintendent candidate because her daughters were in the schools. It wasn't until she applied to become a citizen in 2007 that she said she learned those votes had been illegal. She admitted to the immigration officer that what she did. The government soon started efforts to deport her. I was misled, she said. I want the society to know that I am truly sorry for this error. Her lawyer, Richard Haynes, Dick Haynes, said he has brought her, I'm sorry, I know this is a rough topic, but what a name, said he has brought her case to the Supreme Court. He said the court has already, I just destroyed the whole thing. He said the court has already declined to act to directly stop her removal. But he believes her view of lower court decisions in her case remains possible. I am not a criminal, she said. I am a nurse, I am a grandmother, and I am a mother. The National Voter Registration Act of 1993, or Motor Voter Law, states that driver's license clerks cannot make any statement to an applicant or take any action, the purpose or effect of which is to discourage the applicant from registering to vote. So you see from that language, besides the whole Dick Haynes part, that, look, you cannot now say that the motor voter law is not part of the problem. The motor voter law, as it says, according to the NBC News, and I could be wrong, and if Greg Palast wants to post a rebuttal to what I'm about to say, the motor voter law effectively means that the clerk cannot say to anybody that is applying for a driver's license anything that would discourage them from voting. Now this directly contradicts the other law, which she's getting deported for, which is that a non-U.S. citizen cannot vote. Here we see Palast directly show why he's completely contradicting himself.
It's not Red China. We don't carry citizenship cards. Social security cards, driver's licenses, those are issued to aliens, including the like my team who aren't American citizens but have green cards. So social security number, driver's license mean nothing. You have to have a passport. Now, excuse me, who has a passport? Or there's your original birth certificate. Good luck finding that. And or naturalization paper. So what happens is Kobach, Trump's guy, took this thing on a test drive in Kansas.
So we see how disingenuous his case is. It is demonstrated by his very statement that those are documents that they may have that would not prove their citizenship. And like I said, once you have a driver's license as a photo ID and they are not allowed to discourage you from voting, they can then register you to vote and implicate you in a crime. It's basically the federal government or your state government in that case, the state of Oregon or the state of Missouri, whatever state it would be. If this law is brought fully to its conclusion, would essentially mean that the state government is entrapping you in a crime by very dint of the fact that they cannot discourage you from voting if you are ineligible. Okay, just a further update before we move to the next related topic. It says here, there's the LA Times from July 24th. It says, District Court refuses to block federal government voter information collection. This is by Lauren Rosenblatt, July 24th, 2017. It says a federal court in Washington on Monday cleared the way for President Trump's election commission to ask states to turn over personal voter information as part of its investigation into Trump's claims about voter fraud in the 2016 presidential election. The U.S. District Court ruled against the Electronic Privacy Information Center, a public interest research group that had sought a temporary restraining order to block the Presidential Advisory Commission on election integrity. The court rejected arguments that the commission's request for certain voter data violated the Americans' privacy and that the commission did not follow the constitutional proceedings. Trump has claimed that millions of fraudulent votes were cast in November, mostly by immigrants who entered the country illegally. He has provided no evidence, and nearly every credible election study has concluded that voter fraud is either non-existent or too small to affect outcomes. The commission has been hit with a flurry of lawsuits since its vice chairman, Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, sent a letter to state officials nationwide June 28th, requesting voter information, including dates of birth, partial social security numbers, and information about which election voters participated in since 2006. So there you have it. As of right now, this probe is constitutional, and it will proceed, and I believe that it will uncover some voter fraud. I don't know which states it will be. I suspect that this, you know what, I'll give a prediction right now. The states where this will be the biggest issue will be Colorado, California, New York, New Jersey, and Illinois. Those are my predictions. There could be other ones. Texas could probably pop up. But for now, we're going to leave this to rest. And I can tell you, I will post the links. In fact, in the other video, I will actually post that video. There are links to everything that I just talked about with Greg Palast and his so-called investigation, where he actually, if you saw the last one, he claimed that he spoke on the phone with the Secretary of State for the state of Michigan, who he said was a dude, but whose name is Ruth Johnson, and is in fact a woman. So you can see that. I will post that link, and I will post a link to this LA Times article, and we will now move to a different venue, much sunnier. It's no secret that one of the topics that I've been very focused on in the past few weeks is the unraveling situation in Venezuela, which is possibly one of the more undercovered topics of the past year, and indeed longer. I mean, Venezuela has been a situation where electoral fraud has been an issue for years, probably before the Chavez regime. I'm not going to blame it all on him, but when you have an organization talk about, things like electoral integrity and the sanctity of the vote and the fact that people are having their votes stolen, you do have to question whether they take it across borders. And the Real News is certainly a network that they share a lot of Empire files and Telesaurus material. So it's interesting to see how their take on a different election and how it was conducted changes.
It's the Real News Network of Chamonix Paris coming to you from Baltimore. Fallout from last Sunday's Constitutional Assembly election in Venezuela continues. The opposition has vowed not to recognize the Assembly, and several governments have aligned themselves with the opposition. That includes U.S., Canada, and Mexico. The opposition is now planning a major demonstration on Sunday of the swearing-in of the 545-member Constitutional Assembly, which will take place on Thursday. Complicating matters further for the government, the company that sold and operates Venezuela's voting machines, Smartmatic, its CEO, Antonio Mujica, held a press conference in London on Wednesday saying that Venezuela's electoral authorities inflated the turnout figure by 1 million. Joining us to analyze these developments in Venezuela is Dan Kovalik and Gregory Wilpert. Dan.
Okay, as with every single Real News Network story, you kind of have to go and trace who these people are. So on the left you have Gregory Wilpert, and on the right you have Dan Kovalik. Who are these people? This is Gregory Wilpert, or Greg Wilpert. He is a correspondent for the Real News. He's based in Quito, Ecuador. And he calls himself a journalist, a sociologist, a socialist, and a communist. I don't know what a communist is, but it rhymes with communist. It says here, challenges for the FMLN. For those of you that don't know, the FMLN is a former Marxist rebel group in El Salvador. He has all these interviews from the past few days. He says he interviewed Tibisay Lucena, the controversial leader of the Electoral Commission in Venezuela. Then she interviewed the head of the Left Party in Germany, Bernd Reixinger. So this is a person with extensive experience with the left. You can just go down his page and basically it all just says interviews from Quito, Venezuela's Bolivarian Revolution today. Here's a blog that Wilpert wrote in response to a trash review that the New York Times gave for Oliver Stone's documentary South of the Border. It says smearing a film about Chavez's Venezuela, and it reveals that there are accusations against him that seem to have a little water, and he won't admit it. He says, these are both issues I've written about extensively and consistently since April 2002, about 6 years before my wife was appointed consul in early 2008. Who is his wife? This is from the Venezuelan embassy in Panama. It says, the National Assembly, I'm free translating, approves the nomination of ambassadors in Ecuador and Peru. It says, Carol Josefina Delgado de Wilpert and Diego Alfredo Molero were appointed as ambassadors for the brother republics of Ecuador and Peru, respectively, as part of the daily order of the ordinance session of the National Assembly this March 14th. It was considered the report of the External Political Commission Committee on Policy on Foreign, Sovereign, and Integration Policy, where it was asked to be approved the nomination of new ambassadors for the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for Ecuador and Peru. So then Carol Josefina Delgado Arria de Wilpert was appointed our ambassador to the Republic of Ecuador, and therefore, and also there's the other guy, Diego Molero, was appointed for Peru. That's not the relevant part here, but do you understand that they're interviewing a quote-unquote journalist in Ecuador, which is one of the few remaining friendly South American countries to Venezuela? They're interviewing the husband of the Venezuelan ambassador about the cleanness of the Venezuelan election. So where is the impartiality here? Okay, they did not, in the Empire Files report, which is a Venezuelan TV network that the Real News uses as one of its sources, they did not specify that all the sources used were Greg Palast, and that's it. You have a disparity of standards here. You cannot claim that you are probing the election sanctity or the election cleanliness of a different country when you're only interviewing sources that are sympathetic to you. And that's exactly what they do here. Well, what about, you say, the other person that's featured here?